I'm Christa Biegler, the host of The Less Stress Life, and you and I are overdue on an update. Today's update has a very special topic. And before I get into it, something that you should know about me is that I'm a bit of an instigator or a planner. My favorite friends are the Enneagram sevens that say, when should I be there when I plan us an adventure? So I've been planning little dietitian or health practitioner retreats since at least the pandemic. I don't know, maybe before. I've invested in programs just for the live events and the retreats just to see how they were organized. I'm like a glutton for the experience of what works well. I love psychoanalyzing things and people. It's a favorite, sometimes toxic pastime I have to entertain my brain. And in a little less toxic fashion, it's also a skill of pattern recognition. It's finding common denominators. It's kind of why I also enjoy talking to potential clients or just really getting to know my clients quite well, because there's a lot of magic and just common denominators that you see when you talk to people. I like to think that we're much more alike than we are different. Years ago, my friend and colleague Emily said to me after a conversation, she just gave me an offhanded comment and said, "You're like a collector and connector of people." I think because I was connecting her with someone she should connect with. And that comment, "You're a collector and connector of people," took up rent-free space in my brain literally for years. I just shared this again with her recently, making me wonder, what could I do with this seemingly useless skill? Well, it turns out it's a really useful skill for hosting and facilitating retreats. But let's define what a retreat is first, because sometimes I think there's a term I'm going to use later, and I find that people have all kinds of definitions to what it is. Retreats to me are just an intentional time to step away, to back up, to get clarity. And for some of us, the only retreat we're getting is the shower. And we all know that that's where the best ideas come from when we have that space, when it's the only thing you can do. And my question to you is, what if you retreated daily or just created a little bit of sacred space? For me, I crave that and notice on the days that I don't start my day with a few minutes of sacred space and prayer reflection or whatnot. And I wake up reacting to the day. Anyone who's a parent with small children, when they're very small and waking you up because your sleep is limited, there's a few years of that, knows what I'm talking about. I feel like that is such a common place where you just start to react and then you start react. I think we do that a lot with our phones as well. So what would happen if you just retreated daily? Maybe we'd respond to our life a bit differently, or we'd have a new perspective. And my next question is, what if you retreated for a few days, very intentionally, once or twice, or maybe even a few times a year? What would happen then? What kind of possibility, what kind of expansion, kind of resilience, maybe? I recently interviewed Dr. Paul Anderson. I would say one of my top 10 smartest people I've interviewed. He's an integrative MD. He's also an ND, kind of a really interesting education you can hear about in his interview that's upcoming. It has not published yet. He specializes in complex chronic diseases, autoimmune cases, and cancer. He does a lot of teaching, public speaking, research, in addition to serving his clients and students. And so, in my opinion, he's a bit of an anomaly because he's managed to do all of that behind the scenes while also maintaining a fairly robust health online presence online. And so many things that he's doing take a lot of time and energy. So I couldn't wait to ask him, how are you avoiding burnout? And I mean, this is a really valid question. Sometimes when people are angry with their healthcare provider, I would just like remind them that their healthcare provider is probably burned out. In 2022, the CDC reported that almost half of those working in healthcare were burned out, so it's probably more significant. And honestly, it's a huge soft spot for me to support individuals in avoiding burnout. I just have this huge soft spot for people in service-based professions or working in healthcare, especially working with other humans that we don't need this domino of burnout, right? Like when we're pouring for an empty cup, we just don't react well. And I'm not immune to it. One woman who's coming to my next retreat said to me, sometimes I wake up and the cup is already empty. And it's pretty hard to pour from an empty cup. Like I said, it is not, I'm not an exception. So attending retreats has been a non-negotiable for me. But back to Dr. Anderson, I asked him how he avoids burnout, and he said to me, I go on retreat and I go into the woods every quarter. And then I work with my coach and an integrative mental health professional, and that's how I make it work. And I felt so affirmed when he said that because I think, again, retreats are just non-negotiable. He said, well, it took me 60 years to figure out. But it was just very serendipitous because I was on the cusp of needing to start to talk about this business retreat. And I did mention it very briefly, not on the podcast, just very briefly in passing to my email list and Instagram about a month ago, and we filled 30% of it. And then I was just kind of busy with some other things. Now it is all retreat for me. In April, I hosted this absolutely magical experience. The retreat was called Reset in Sedona. And I was really fortunate that it just filled really quickly from my network of colleagues and clients and their friends. So you may not have heard me talk about it, but it was perfect. And I'll talk more about it later. It just hits differently when you take a few days away, when you're immersed in nature with a creek running by. Both places have had a creek running by, and it's flippin' magic. When you have incredible food, you have adventure, rest, and then also integration, like processing kind of the amazingness that it's happened, which Breathwork's an amazing integration tool for that. Every woman that attended my Reset in Sedona retreat rated breathwork as one of the favorite things that she did in the retreat. So we did breathwork every day on retreat. And again, it totally is a different experience when you're away from your daily environment. You can really engage, you can really drop in, you can really get a lot more out of it. Day one, no one, I mean, the day one of a retreat is always the hardest because everyone's had travel all day. And then after that, it gets better and better and better. Breathwork gives you the opportunity to tap into your own genius by dropping into your subconscious brain and theta brainwave state. Theta brainwaves are the brainwaves before delta waves or sleep waves, and they're amazing for memory recall, creativity, and healing. And I don't know if you know this, but our subconscious is making 95% of our decisions through the day, and our logical brain just 5%. Now, this is kind of a common knowledge fact, so you can Google that and you should find it anywhere. And once you really let that sink in, because it's a little unbelievable, it kind of changes everything if you're reminded of it. So stopping to tend to our subconscious is truly one of the ways you can change your life. You can change your life without quitting your job, moving to a deserted island, or whatever else people think they have to do for stress resilience. So right now I facilitate breath work for my clients and retreat participants, but who knows, maybe in the future I'll open that up a little bit more. I feel a lot of change coming for me. So, as I mentioned, I have that soft spot for helping service providers and practitioners avoid burnout. So, I really wanted to create a retreat for them. But my first retreat manager said, no, just like put out there the vibe that you're looking for and see what happens. But I think that these people who care for others that drive the industry, I see, women operating in this high achieving masculine, like do, and then burnout. And if you're really good at it, you don't know that you're burned out. You're just kind of going because it's the only thing you know. You're just so damn good at doing everything. And you've built that life. You've built the life you have now on deadlines and chaos. There's another business owner coming to my next retreat for business. And she said the words to me, I thrive on deadlines. And now this happens to me all the time because we attract people just like us. But I had to stop and laugh. I was like, did that come out of your mouth or my mouth? Because I used to say that used to come out of my mouth all the time. All the time. Once upon a time, I wanted to be a reporter because I just love thriving at deadlines. Um, I've been digging into the evidence and rationale of a statement that I keep hearing, and I'll include a few links in the show notes about that is that successful entrepreneurs have a high rate of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, aka traumatic experiences as defined in research or science. ACEs is a tool that they use in research a lot. So for this reason, business owners, entrepreneurs often crave chaos, or just successful people crave chaos and subconsciously create it in their business. So I'll never forget when I was doing 6 months of coaching with my friend and colleague Jess McKinley Wayno, and I very clearly had made this like shift very intentionally. And after I made the intention, it took me a few months to get to the fruits of the labor. I made the shift not be in 8 to 9 hours of direct client care every single day, so I could give myself some space to work on some other things. And turns out I was a bit crispy from it. Now, I like to remind you, this is a little bit of a privilege in business ownership. Doctors and other providers working in other establishments don't always get that luxury. So I'll just acknowledge that. I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought I was managing it just fine, but I really was pouring from a very empty cup for my family at the end of the day. So I made some shifts. And for the first time in years, I had these tiny little open spaces on my calendar. And at first, I totally freaked out, like internally, just worry, fear, scarcity. I mean, I was just sharing it with my coach because that was her job for me to share my mental drama with her. And if I didn't have my coach there to show me that I was the root cause of my stress, that she just helped show me my thoughts, and the root cause of my stress. It was me, it was my thoughts. I could have totally self-sabotaged myself and just done the opposite of what I said I wanted. I could have just filled it right back up because that was comfortable, right? And I feel like I see that a lot. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever done that? Done the opposite of what you say you wanted? I think we do it all the time. Gay Hendricks might call that an upper limit problem, where things are just too good, so then you go and self-sabotage them. I recently interviewed Gay Hendricks, this adorable man who, for me, it was like one of those pinch me moments where someone has had this significant impact on your life, and then you get to talk to that person. In his book, The Big Leap, which I have right here, it was gifted to me by one of my first mentors I had for retreat planning. Little side note, I always pursue mentorship anytime I want to shortcut my failures or succeed faster. Paying other people that know how to do things already that I want to know how to do is hands down, in my opinion, the fastest way to get what you want. So anyway, I was reading Gay's book, The Big Leap, about a year ago. When I got to his description, I think it was, maybe it was two. I think it was just one description of the zone of excellence. And his description of the zone of excellence stopped me in my tracks. There's a couple other zones he talks about as well. But let me share this with you. The zone of excellence are the activities that you do extremely well. For successful people, this zone is seductive and dangerous. It prevents you from the quantum leap into your zone of genius. The zone of excellence is where your comfort level is. It's where your family, your friends, or even your organization or your place that you work would want you to stay. The problem is that there's this deep sacred part of you that will wither and die if you stay in your zone of excellence instead of transcending into your zone of genius, what you're really called to do in the world. He goes on to say that by the age of 40, many of us are called to our zone of genius. And for those that are ignoring it, we get alarms in our body in the form of depression, illness, injury, relationship conflict. Like reading all of this was quite painful. Um, People die in the zone of excellence. For me, hosting retreats is part of my zone of genius. And as one of the business owners who's coming to my future retreat said, she had told me something she had said to me is that she wanted to feel more alive. And then she went on a little bit of a rabbit hole about zone of genius, and she saw someone describe it as feeling alive. Hosting retreats is that way for me. I feel like alive in a new way. It's a service, it's an art form, honestly, to curate, and it's so much flipping work, but it fills my cup so much. And I get constant reminders of it. So here I am telling you about why I'm hosting retreats, what you can expect from me, how you can go on retreat. My process for a highly curated transformational retreat includes picking out a kick-ass location. I'm personally specializing in farm-to-table locations across the US. I started with places I thought were already epic. The first time I went to Sedona, my life was changed. I go to Bozeman every single year, and I think it's this magical little place that I can't wait to share with people. So that's why I'm doing that as well. So pick a kick-ass location. Then plan the big core events. Like in Sedona, I did these like big bucket list items. And then, for example, with the one in Bozeman, it's right outside of Yellowstone National Park. So I've been to Yellowstone a couple of times. So I'm going to take the women on a day trip to Yellowstone to see some of the prettiest places in Yellowstone. And we're going to leverage time. I have my guest coach coming in, none other than Jessica McKinley Wayno. Hopefully, we'll do a little joint episode soon. The one who was my mental coach for a long time, having her come in, she's flying in from New York to coach while we're on our way to and from Yellowstone. Why not? Why not? Then, as the third step for me when I curate retreats is really as the initial people step forward, I just really plan the rest of the content specifically for them. The last retreat, I had like these perfect matchups of people. And when I got down to the end, I actually had to like pass on a few people that just weren't the right fit to kind of like complement the group perfectly, right? So once I kind of understand that group's energy, I don't think most people do that. But it's something I really care about. So, like I said, I've been really wanting to serve business owners in a retreat for a while, and I'll tell you, why. Remember that conversation about how business owners just create chaos, right? Potentially as a response to the adversity they've dealt with in life. Well, one huge move I made to reduce chaos and improve ease and flow was using a system that helps you establish really your mission, vision, values. It sounds simple, but it's so impactful, right? So often the most impactful things are, but we don't spend time to do them. And then you reevaluate those things on a quarterly basis and then also an annual basis, either with yourself or with your team to create this entire company culture that's really aligned to you and like the things that you've set forth. These foundations just become the filter, the lens in which you make decisions. And since I've implemented this almost 3 years ago, my business is run more like a well-oiled machine than a chaotic spaghetti factory. Um, and it's imperfect. I revisit and revise these foundations, and it allows me to go through the year just again with like more alignment, more ease, more flow. And I mean, it took me a bit, like maybe a few months to kind of get my groove with it and some support from the team. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could just share this with people. Like it's so transformational. So it's something I've been wanting to share with other business owners or at least facilitate the space for them to get really clear about it. What I find with different levels of business owners is that they don't always have this North Star in place. But what I do notice with some that have a lot of success is that it is already partially developed. They just really need to hone it in. And that's how you come up with a really aligned business. Um, Something else I notice in those that are really successful is that, or at least the women I have coming on this trip so far, is that they're usually doing a lot of things. So they really need to step back, refocus, gain their best ideas from getting a little space and release the things that are no longer serving them, right? So often when you're building, you're doing everything in that business. My coach and my friend Jess McKinley Wayno is a really amazing business coach, and she defines a successful business as business equals math minus your drama about it. And I really couldn't agree more. One of my brothers owns a couple businesses, and he was telling me recently a story about how he'd hired someone who made a mistake that cost him thousands of dollars due to some sort of communication breakdown. I mean, this just like plug and play here. This is like happens all the time. And how frustrated he was. But then in the next breath told me how he had rehired the same person because he felt bad for the kid and he wanted to give him a chance. And I just laughed with him and said, I was very neutral. I have no opinion about the situation, but I made sure to tell him that business equals math minus your drama about it. And he laughed and said, isn't that the truth? So Jess coaches people in all avenues of business. And she has agreed so kindly to fly out from New York and help with the coaching in this retreat. Truly, the only thing preventing a person from the business they want that can impact so many and change the world is just really you, yourself. Your brain. Your brain is just the best investment because it expands possibility, opportunity, and allows you to perceive things differently. And truly, a shift in perception is like all that it takes, really. So I invited her to help me facilitate this next retreat for business owners, service providers, and women with wellness of businesses in Bozeman, Montana, this late September, scheduled very intentionally for after kids go to school, for after the summer settles down, but before the first snow flies, and we can still reap the harvest of the farm to table location. When thinking about the alchemy of the things that have created the biggest quantum leaps in my business, mental drama coaching, clarity around this mission, vision, values, subconscious integration through breath work, and a ton of fun in communities of badass women, all of those things have been huge, and all of those are what I'm including in this particular retreat for business owners called Retreat and Recharge, a retreat for overstimulated women, entrepreneurs wanting to reclaim their life. So the cool thing about retreats being my zone of genius that I'm developing is that the ideas just keep coming for these insane retreats. So right now, each retreat has a slightly different edge and angle. And how I know if I'm going to do that particular retreat again with that same lens or angle is the ease in which I fill it. So I have to figure out if I'm speaking your language, am I hitting on what could serve you? Like I know that the people I want to have this retreat for need it so much. I know it's going to be this incredible experience. And your applications tell me if I'm hitting the nail on the head and if it's worth doing again after this one. So I know that this business retreat in Bozeman is going to be life-changing. So if it is something that you might be interested in, go apply. If you're interested in Reset in Sedona, which was such a freaking hit that we're doing it again very soon, go apply. Even if you don't think you can come this year, just put it in the comments. Like, I can't make it to either of these dates, but I want to know first next year. Apply because that's how I know whether I'm going to do that or if I'm going to move on with other retreats. So I have a new website called lessstressliferetreats.com. Very creative. And you can go there to fill out the application. The Japanese actually prescribe time in the woods and they call it Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing. And I am giggling inside, thinking about how fun it will be to go forest bathe in Bozeman, Montana with you, just outside of Yellowstone National Park. At this location, there is an outdoor sauna. We have accommodations that are creekside, which I think is such a beautiful thing. We are off in the woods, but just 10 minutes from a pretty big airport. So really not a lot of travel time once you get to the city. So again, if you're interested in this retreat or any other retreat this year, head over to lessstressliferetreats.com. And regardless, I hope that you appreciated the conversation today about the zone of excellence, the zone of genius, the equation of business, and any other tidbits from today. I'm so glad you're here, and let's do this again sooner next time.